Concept in cognitive mapping in the context of movement output involves discovering so many different types of ways to move with your own body, and you can also get to the context of mapping with an external object as well. From individuals that might have injuries, whether or not they're surgeries, fresh from an injury in an acute fashion, or maybe it's even a chronic injury, there are things that go on not just muscularly, physiologically, but also neurologically as it relates to how we can move. In some cases, we can begin to stray away from certain movements because we might be afraid of them. And when I say neurologically, I might also speak about the psychological aspects as it relates to fear-based movements, but in the grand scheme of things, this cognitive mapping is there to build a map so that other instructions can be uploaded, theoretically, in an easier fashion. So what I mean by this is, if we were to have an injury, say at the ACL, or some type of lower ankle injury, we can begin to think about loading it right away. Start doing different jumps, start doing different movements to get movement being part of the solution. So what I want to integrate here is the concept of static and discovery-based movement, and then having more of a dynamic-based discovery movement. This is just going to be an individual-based exercise. There's no reactions. There's no other individual interfacing with me. So what I want to go through is if an individual needs to load certain structures on a mechanical level, let's do that. But then we also have to respect that there's other neurological things going on. Sometimes some people might be afraid of taking a bigger step because they might have had a knee injury, a hip injury, an ankle injury. And these are things that might not be addressed because once you are done with your return to play protocols, well, you're good to go now. But this is not always the case because the individual will have this psychological aspect where they might not even know that they're afraid of it, but they just don't want to confront this line and go across it because that's limiting them from performing better. Or if in the context of just everyday life, we might not want to carry the thing because it might be detrimental to our lives. In this case, I'm going to go through a very easy single leg drill that we can use in the context of discovery-based movement. We can do this in so many different ways, and to use Nikolai Bernstein, his thought process of repetition with repetition, we're going to go into some ways that we can have this be a static drill and then have the same drill but have other contexts around it. So we're going to go into a single leg stance here. I have 1 foot down, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put more weight on that leg. So in the exercise and fitness world, this is going to be the beginning foundation for either a split stance position or like the back position of an RDL, a single leg RDL, right? And I'm going to hold that position because from here, I'm putting more weight into these adductors, hamstrings, and glutes. I'm not really pushing my hip out to the side. I'm maintaining good stability in this position because what I'm going to be doing is I have some weight back here too. What I'm going to be doing is I have this implement, I can even do it without it, of moving my body around this stable position. So if I move my body around, I might be able to get different positions because now I can get into different positions to help myself. And if I want to start getting to more dynamic movement from the upper half going up, I can go into some more swinging movements without losing this object, this stability here. So I'm going for some faster movements now, and it gets harder. You might see me rocking back and forth. So I'm going to give my left leg a break. I'm going to go on my right side, putting some more weight here. Now I'm going to use an object so I can maybe get some swinging going, or I can get some gentle pushing, right, if we have a very fresh post-op individual. So there's lots of different things we can do movement-wise because at this position, we might even get into some, if we had a band, we could do power press, anti-rotation press, whatever it may be, because what we're doing is we're integrating so many different movements. In this case, there is no right movement because when we're working in the real world, who knows what's going to happen. So, I'm not saying do all the wrong movements from a mechanical position, but what we need to do is respect the fact that there are so many different movements in the world, we're just going to try to map a few of them. So in this case, we're going to get into more of a dynamic movement, and we're going to change the context of it. So, single leg position, got my ball, I'm going to have my eyes closed now. So first I'm going to move pretty gentle. And if you're a coach working with a client, therapist working with a patient, you might begin to ask, what do you feel? Because if you give them the task, they're going to do the task. but they're not going to be cognitively aware of what's going on. And then you can use that feedback from the individual to guide your instructions, right? Knowledge of feedback and such. So what we're going to do now is, that was pretty static. There's pretty stable exercise, not that much movement. We're going to increase the speed because that's one context. I'll have my eyes closed as well. And I can definitely feel my abs. I can definitely feel my leg working.
In a couple videos, I have a dynamic movement of a single leg RDL with a couple different positions for reaching. So I'm going to the right, I'm going to the left, I'm going to be going up to the right, up and to the left. So there's so many variations that you can do and still maintain the single leg RDL nature of this exercise. So you can even have your eyes open, eyes closed, whatever variations you want, because at the end of the day, you're still training a single leg RDL, but now you're just changing the center of gravity and you're pushing yourself off balance. So all we do normally is a single leg RDL, and we're identifying, okay, we can get into different planes of motion with different reaching drills.
So those are all different ways that you can use one position and have all these discovery-based movements, right? I could even done this, right? Some basketball drills, some different movements to get the context of do whatever movement is possible within the guidelines of single leg stability, because we're trying to get better at this one thing, on top of understanding that we need to slowly integrate the cognitive and then get into more of the subconscious afterwards. Sometimes we need this, sometimes we need that, and it's up to the coach, therapist, practitioner to determine what is what.